What is going on, everybody? Happy Tuesday, March 15th. We are talking some NBA for the next half hour or so. Brendan Glasheen with DraftKings contributors, content specialists, Shirag Hira, and Matt Meiselman, both very high on covering the National Basketball Association. There are only 4 games tonight. If anything major breaks on the NBA injury front, there are a few players that are questionable on tonight's slate, including Ja Morant, Cade Cunningham, Malcolm Brogdon. Those are some names that do jump out. So we will keep eyes on that. Also, if there is anything that breaks in the NFL world, we can certainly discuss. Nothing too major today like it was yesterday, but there are a lot of Deshaun Watson rumors swirling around. So if anything comes across the desk, as they like to say in the business, we will certainly discuss, and anything else you would like to get into as well. NCAA tournament is also starting up tonight with the first 4. So yeah, get your brackets done, all that good stuff. So we'll start in the NBA, and we've got 4 games tonight. No matchup that is particularly must watch, but there is always an angle. There is always some sort of edge you can get, especially when you have these 2 gentlemen joining a show, and you can find a way to make some money tonight in the NBA. So we're looking at the DK Sportsbook, Brooklyn, Orlando, Memphis, Indiana, Detroit, Miami, and Phoenix, New Orleans. That is your slate for tonight. Matt Meiselman, I start with you. What game, or just looking at the slate altogether, there are 3 games that have 3 possession spreads. So what? Help people feel comfortable with picking a side tonight in any of these games.
Well, maybe that's not something I'm that good at doing, because the teams I tend to like to cover spreads are generally the teams that people don't want to bet on because they just have been bad for most of the season. So like, I'm finding value in teams that have underperformed for the majority of the year and are going against teams that I think have overperformed. So the game I'll start with is Pacers Grizzlies, and yeah, no one's going to like betting on Indiana. I mean, it's gross. It feels wrong. It feels like they're going to get blown out every game. If you watch them, they generally look bad, but there's a couple things going on. First of all, I don't think there's really much of a chance Ja Morant plays tonight. I think he's technically actually listed doubtful, even though we had him questionable there. So it would be really surprising if Morant winds up playing. I think it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that he won't be out there. And then on the Pacers side, what we really need is for at least one of Malcolm Brogdon and Chris Duarte to play. So the Pacers' biggest weakness is they don't really have interior defense. And fortunately, they're facing a Grizzlies team that has a non-scoring threat at center in Steven Adams. He's a defense-first guy. He's a very good rebounder, just a good player overall, but he's not Nikola Vucevic. He's not Joel Embiid, just to go up the list of scoring threats. Like, he's a good player, but that's not someone where you need to have good interior defense. And obviously with Morant out, they don't need to protect the rim quite as much either. So I think they should do okay being a guard-heavy team going against the Grizzlies, who are a guard-heavy team. But if you get Brogdon and or Duarte not playing, that means Lance Stevenson, Dwayne Washington, Kiefer Sykes, like these guys have to play significant minutes. And in that case, I don't really like the Pacers much. So really what I'm saying is, if the Pacers are healthy tonight, +7 is a really good line. I think it should be a lot lower, but we do have to monitor this, because if it's just the Buddy Hield and Tyrese Halliburton show, those guys are talented, but that's not enough to be really confident in this team. I think you need Brogdon and Duarte, at least one of them out there too.
Shirag, what game of the 4 tonight in the NBA jumps out at you?
That one too. I mean, honestly, I look at it from a different perspective. You have an opportunity here where you can look at DeAnthony Melton. Yeah, it's not a sexy name and he's not going to jump off the page at you, but his points prop is set at 9.5 right now, with Ja Morant closer to doubtful. I mean, that can potentially move to 10 or 11.5 or whatever, but at 9.5, I have a little bit of kind of excitement to go and play that one. Also, we have Tyrese Halliburton, who has been playing spectacular ball with Brogdon hurt. Halliburton has scored over 17 points in 3 straight games. His current player prop is set to 17.5 +100. So maybe that implies that there's a chance that Brogdon plays, but just the just, I mean, from a fantasy perspective, he's 9,300. So where are those stats coming from? Okay, he's dropped 10 plus assists in 3 straight games. And the one game he missed that 10 number, he dropped 9. So with Brogdon out of the lineup, Halliburton has been playing really well. D'Anthony Melton should step up for John Morant being out. We don't have any other lines for other Grizzlies guards, but Dylan Brooks, he's a known scorer. I'm a little bit weary on guys that are just so focused on scoring the basketball, but maybe it works out in this matchup. And then looking at potentially taking an alternate game line, maybe going a little bit safer and saying, okay, Pacers plus 9.5. You take the 9.5, you get an entirely huge buffer. You throw it on a same game parlay with Melton and Halliburton. You're looking at an opportunity where Melton only has to score 8 points or 9 points, whatever one you want to take. Let's take 8.5. And you put in Tyrese Halliburton at 16.5. You're looking at a situation where you're already sitting at plus 300. I know Matt doesn't like as many of these same game parlays, but it's kind of correlated all together if you just the way that this game is based on all the injury news. Melton over 8.5, Halliburton over 16.5, and Pacers plus 8.5 gives you a plus 400 same game parlay that's really enticing and focused on the main points of the contest.
What was the fourth one? So I've got
Just
16.5 Halliburton, Memphis minus 8.5, and
plus
then
8.5.
Yeah, we're going with the Pacers, not the Grizzlies.
Yes,
Get the
apologies.
Grizzlies out of here.
My apologies.
Pacers plus. That's
It's
sorry.
understandable why
ramble,
someone would
I've
choose
been really
the Grizzlies.
focused on this game. It was a really big ramble, but I've been focused on this game because of the opportunities that these present us. And whenever there's an injury news, like I literally have been mashing Tyrese Halliburton overs for the last 3 games because it's just an opportunity where why are you going to sit back and wait? He's playing well. He's their de facto point guard now. He doesn't need to pass at anybody. Brogdon was getting a huge amount of usage as well when he was in there. It's not like he's not like playing second fiddle. He's dominating the ball too. And Melton, 8.5 points. He's scored over 8.5 points in games that Morant has played, and he's played off the bench. He scored 14 and 15 when he's played 24 minutes. So I just see an opportunity here for the same game parlay to be really nice for this game at plus 400.
Memphis has been a good team all year long against the number, at home, on the road, altogether one of the best marks in the NBA. So, but that's with their best player being out. That certainly changes things.
Not as much. Matt would attest.
Or could change things.
That the Memphis Grizzlies are so deep as a team. Like, honestly, that's why I'm taking the plus 8.5, because they're such a solid team. Number 2 in the Western Conference, not just by a fluke luck too. Their contributing pieces are all doing their part. So that's why I looked at plus 8.5, because this is a solid team all around.
Gotcha. So I see what you're saying. So you're saying get the better number with the Pacers because you actually do trust the Grizzlies to cover 7, but you're buying a couple extra points. Or
cover 7, so you're buying a couple of points. Exactly.
Right. Wow. All right. I didn't expect the Pacers. Well, like Meiselman said off the top, the Pacers can be just a very interesting is giving them too much credit, but they can certainly be a team that just when you think you got them figured out, not necessarily. But
just to reiterate on them, like we need Brogdon and Duarte. So the reason that I'm not I guess my one issue with Chirag's parlay really is I don't think there's a correlation here. Ooh. Because Halliburton doing well is dependent on Brogdon not being available. And if Brogdon's not available, I don't really like the Pacers very much. So like those things, correlations can be very tricky in basketball because you assume that if a guy does well, his team is more likely to do well. But when you have an external factor like an injury scenario, your correlations are dependent on different things than just the results of the game. Like if Brogdon winds up playing, Tyrese Halliburton's points prop is going to drop from 17.5 to like 15.5. Yep. Because he's just not going to score as much with Malcolm Brogdon playing. And if you add Chris Duarte too, that's less important, but still that would probably drop it even further. So like, I don't I don't anticipate. I mean, I just think like if Brogdon gets ruled out, you want to bet Halliburton over. And if Brogdon's in, you want to bet the Pacers, but those are separate things. Those are in different scenarios. They're actually not totally related to each other. I think you can actually take advantage of the way that same game parlays are priced sometimes, where if you actually were to parlay Halliburton's unders with the Pacers, they're going to price that as negatively correlated. So we can just do this as an exercise. We don't have a lot of games to go through today, but let's say go into the same game parlay tab. Let's try this again. And we take the Pacers just to cover the regular spread. We'll just go 6.5. And then Tyrese Halliburton's under on points.
Which that just moved. It was at 7. It just moved to 6.5.
Yeah, so
no, it's the way the same game parlay is set up. There's always a hook usually.
Okay.
On the
yeah. Let's go with plus 7.5 because I think that was closer to what the line was before. So we'll take Pacers plus 7.5 and under on Halliburton points. And you should be able to get close to like plus 300 on this because the parlay algorithm
under 17 and a half.
Let's go with that number.
Because that's his line right now.
So it's only plus 240. But anyway, my point here is the parlay algorithm thinks these are negatively correlated because if Halliburton does worse, the Pacers are less likely to cover. And while that's generally true, if Malcolm Brogdon plays, both of these things become more likely. The Pacers are better and Halliburton's worse if Brogdon plays. So that's why they're correlated to me, is because they're dependent on the same thing. They're both dependent on Malcolm Brogdon playing. And to me, that's more important than the way the game script goes. So all of this is a long way of saying I care very much if Brogdon's out there, and we don't know that yet. And to try to, it's a little hard to take too strong of a stand here before we get that information.
Well, in addition to that, you have an option to take Halliburton's number at 18.5. So that gives a little even more cushion if Brogdon ends up playing. Yeah, you lose a little bit, but you're still over plus 200. And you can, if you want to move that, you can move that to plus 8.5 too. So yeah, the other way to correlate that is get a little extra point for Halliburton's under.
Very good. All right. Now, how about, since we're so focused on Pacers Grizzlies and what kind of impact Ja Morant being out and Malcolm Brogdon possibly being out, how that impacts the DFS slate. And injuries for these kinds of slates are, of course, very important, especially when it's a big name like Morant, because he's the second most expensive player. It does impact who could end up being chalk, where you find value. Like, does the Pacers backcourt and or the Memphis backcourt become so chalky where you do need to find another game to target to have differentiation?
Okay, well, just to stop for a second, it turns out Malcolm Brogdon and Chris Duarte and Lance Stevenson are all going to play. Here
wow!
All
right,
this never happens to us.
Yeah,
we always
actually
get the news after we end the show.
If you have an opportunity to play, as we just mentioned, Halliburton under 18.5 and yep, we have the spread right there. Plus 205 would be able to. Oh
no, it's gone.
That's how fast you have to be.
Everyone should have done it while we were talking because it was
no, but that's a really, really good point that was just made live on air. Like, you literally have to be thinking about this specifically in that exact moment, have it ready in your bet slip for that play and hit go. Like, that's how much the game and the news breaks. Like, from the time he mentioned it to the time we were able to click it, like, it was pretty much gone. Like, that's how the game goes.
That game's off the board entirely.
3 games are up now. So Pacers, Grizzlies off the board.
And just to guess here, I think the Pacers probably come back up somewhere around plus 5.5. And I still probably like it a bit at that number. I think it should be lower. Like, the Grizzlies are generally just overvalued. I don't think it's because Morant's out. That was kind of the point Shrag was making before. And this will be telling when we go to back over to DFS too, because I don't want to just throw that away because news happened. I do think it's worth talking about. But Morant, I think, is kind of overvalued just because of how good the Grizzlies' backup guards are. So the reason that I like the Pacers tonight and think they're undervalued, it's not because of Morant. It's just because the Grizzlies have overperformed expectations this year. And I think the Pacers have underperformed expectations and they're getting healthier. So I like the Pacers for those reasons. And it's not really because I think Morant being out is such a big deal. It's more just like the way these teams have set up over the course of the season. But yeah, I guess if that's enough on betting for this game, we can go back to DFS and talk about these two teams.
Sure. Well, real quick, who is the I'm not questioning you. I'm more so who reported this? Like who put this out there?
Well, we've got it from like every source. The Pacers team, their PR, like their Twitter account.
Just, journalism, capital J journalism on this program. I just want to make sure we're like telling
Indiana
people.
Pacers verified Twitter account says Duarte, Stevenson, Brogdon available, and Goga Bitadze still game time.
Okay, there you go. So the Pacers themselves said this. This is not a report or which Pacers PR you must have gotten through because they are a private account. So good job, Meiselman.
Thank you.
More proof too. You got to follow the right people. And Indiana Pacers basketball communications is a locked account on Twitter. So.
Oh wow, that's interesting. I did not know that.
You didn't know that? Well, I got it up right now. You have to basically get permission to follow them.
Why? I mean, I guess they've given DK people. I don't know. I don't know. That's a very weird phenomenon. But anyway.
Well, it kind of isn't though. Like they don't want people trolling them, I think is
right. No, that's fair.
Yeah. I can follow Celtics PR. That's probably about it. So anyway, there you go.
Anyway,
there's the fix. Moving on from a daily fantasy standpoint. So that's good. It came out from the Pacers. So that's legit. Yeah. That is legit. That is happening. That's why the line came down. Moving to DFS. So like I said before, the question I asked with Brogdon now playing, we don't know what's happening with Memphis yet. So that's still up in the air.
That's not really up in the air though. I mean,
doubtful, right?
Doubtful. So
okay,
that's
all right. Fair enough.
I think overall, we probably can't be very interested in the Pacers for DFS, though. If Bitadze isn't playing, Isaiah Jackson, who's been playing really well lately, 5,200 is probably somewhat of a value. But on the Memphis side, I think you almost have to play Tyus Jones, regardless of how popular he is. Like 3,400 and starting at point guard and probably playing 30 plus minutes. It's too good. Like you want to avoid chalk if it makes sense to. Tyus Jones could be 80 or 90% owned tonight. You still just have to have him because he's almost certainly going to kill you if you don't have him. This isn't like there's a 50-50 shot he's amazing and 50-50 he's bad and you're just playing him because you're scared of the other 50. He's almost certainly going to put up 20 plus fantasy points. I think the only real reason to fade him is if you're in a massive contest where like all the money goes to first, you just hope he gets injured. So to me, he's a lock button. You just play him. Dylan Brooks is more interesting though at 4,900. Like that's more of a conversation because he's definitely going to be very popular too. But there are more ways that Dylan Brooks can fail. They have depth. They have D'Anthony Melton, who Shrug talked about. Brooks does have a tendency to get in foul trouble. He's usually guarding the other team's best player. He's a very aggressive defender. So that's more of a conversation. I'm not really sure where I land on that. But basically, I think you have to play Tyus Jones almost certainly, depending on the contest you're in. And then Brooks, you could kind of maybe try to get away from because of what should be really high ownership on him too.
Shrog, you have a thought you want to add there?
I'm a little bit concerned on and thinking about as much on high ownership on a 4,900 guy on a 4-game slate. But at the same time, that might be the time to think about it because there are only so many options that people can go to and they're going to default to the easiest one. And Morant being out and then they see that news, oh, he's officially out after being doubtful, that like triggers like this rush of like, oh, I need to play that guy because that's the news that just broke right now. And Memphis just comes back up right now on the board.
Okay.
Just as I was just looking at it on my screen.
Now I've only got 2 games up.
We just got Seth Curry and Cam Thomas ruled out. They were both questionable for the Nets. That one I don't actually think has much impact on the spread because Patty Mills essentially can just be Seth Curry tonight. I really don't think the Nets need, and Cam Thomas is not playing a huge role in games where both Durant and Kyrie Irving are healthy. Right. He was probably going to play 12 minutes anyway, or 15.
Yeah, this game was in Brooklyn, different story, but it's all right in Orlando.
And for DFS, this could be relevant now if you pick up, I don't know, Bruce Brown and Patty Mills playing more minutes, or you go further down the depth chart for some garbage time guys if the Nets end up blowing them out. I think. Yeah, I'm not really sure. Maybe like Goran Dragic gets a bump here too, but it's not super relevant because the Nets are pretty healthy for this game. That those two guys, but that's why it's off the board. Is the Nets just got news? I think the game we should pivot to talking about with the other major news that we don't know yet is the Heat Pistons game with Cade Cunningham. Yeah. That's really like the one major thing that we didn't address with Grizzlies Pacers, because I don't think this Nets news is super relevant. But Cunningham got downgraded this morning with, I think it's a non-COVID illness.
It's an illness. Yep. I just double checked. It's an illness for Cunningham. Questionable.
So if this were earlier in the season, like the first 2 months, I would have said Cade Cunningham isn't good yet, and I don't care if he's in or out, because he, like, the way he looked his first, I don't know, 7 games, 10 games, something like that, he was not shooting well. He seemed pretty lost on defense, which sort of is still true, but overall, he was just not helping the team win. And more recently, like for people who have watched the Pistons play at all in the last, I don't know, month, I mean, and you probably saw some of their game against the Celtics. Like Cade Cunningham has been really, really good lately. And if it wasn't for the Jared Allen injury that basically increased the responsibility for Evan Mobley for Cleveland, I think we would be talking about Cunningham having a real chance to come back from behind and win Rookie of the Year. So there's no question Cunningham's been better. I think just about anyone following the NBA would agree with that, which means that now it actually matters quite a bit if he doesn't play, because I think if the Heat were playing the early season version of the Pistons with this loaded roster that Miami now has with full strength players, Victor Oladipo, the whole thing, Miami probably is like a 17-point favorite for this game. Cunningham is the reason. Cunningham's improved play is the reason that this line is only 13. If you take him out now, like the drop off to Killian Hayes, I think is massive. So, and then Isaiah Livers is the other guy who would play. Like these are much worse players than what Cunningham has been lately. So I actually really like the Heat a lot, laying this massive number that should be more massive if Cunningham doesn't play. Like if he gets ruled out, I'm very interested in taking the Heat minus 13. I honestly don't even hate it anyway, but I think this is a pretty big deal if he doesn't play. Maybe less so for DFS, but for betting purposes, like I think Miami should win this game really easily if he's not out there.
What do you project the line to move to if he's ruled out?
So the line was only moved from 12.5 to 13 with our initial update earlier.
Yep.
And
the questionable tag.
What's hard to know is how likely it is or how much the sportsbooks are pricing in the chance of him being out. Like the reason the line only moved a half point could be because sportsbooks don't think Cunningham matters that much, or it could be that they don't think he's actually in question of missing the game, right? There's two separate conditions. One is just they don't think it's a big deal that he was downgraded and he's going to play anyway, which would mean you don't move the line. Or if you don't think the player's any good, you don't move the line. I actually don't know which one it is, but my hunch is it's closer to they don't value him that much yet. I think it's closer to that scenario, because if you look at Cunningham's full season, he actually has not been that good in terms of like win share metrics, wins above replacement, all of that. His value has come all very recently. So all of that is to say, like, I think the sportsbooks are undervaluing Cunningham and overvaluing the rest of the Pistons. And maybe if he gets ruled out, the line moves only to like 14 or 15 when I think it should move to like 18 or 19 in that scenario.
Oh, that's a big number. Wow.
The big difference.
But
part of why I like this spot for the Heat too is, and I've talked about this a lot this season, is Miami's second unit is really good. Yeah. And I don't worry that much about garbage time for them. Like for a normal game, laying a lot of points like this, what you worry about is a backdoor cover. Like if you're betting on the Warriors and they're up 22, and now you've got like Moody, Kuminga, Bielitsa, like all these backups, Chris Chiozza, whoever it is playing at the end of the game, they could blow the lead and end up only winning by 10 in garbage time. Miami, like they have players who are much better than any other team's second unit, with Gabe Vincent and Max Strus and Yurtsevin and Caleb Martin, who may or not. Yeah, like these are really good second unit players. So I'm not as worried. Like if Miami is playing those guys with a 20-point lead at the end of the game, I'm not nearly as concerned about what could happen in the final few minutes. The Celtics just played the Pistons in a very similar spot and were up 18 with 2 minutes left, pulled all the starters and put in, you know, the guys that Glass you're probably very familiar with from the G League, and they got outscored 7-0 in the last 2 minutes of the game. So I don't worry about that as much with Miami.
Wow, Sharag, that was well done by Meiselman there to work in a dig against the lack of depth.
That wasn't a dig. That was not a dig. That was a shot. That was a shot at you. That was a shot at you.
No, that was just showing how much I know about what's going on. It was like a ego boost for me.
Yeah. Oh no,
Pat
not me
Pat the back.
individually, but the Celtics lack of depth in well, not lack of, but more so their tight rotation. They're very tight rotations they run. Shirag, you want to weigh in on this one as well? I think you had thoughts, right?
I mean, just I would be finger ready on the pulse if you do like the Heat at this number. I would maybe look at it from like, let me take it down and pay a little bit of juice and be a little bit more comfortable bringing it under like a more manageable number, but that's a little bit more difficult to find unless you're finding like different game lines. And a Heat to cover by 9.5, which is basically win by 10, is minus 180. I don't know if that's a lot of juice to pay for a double-digit win. So if you like it, take it if Cunningham's out. But if Cunningham's in, then I'm not really that interested in this game. I'd rather just stick to going harder on what could be Indiana, Memphis, and looking at potential opportunities with the other games with Phoenix and New Orleans. I think that's a more entertaining game to worry about than Heat Pistons.
Okay. Memphis now only -6. It's been juiced to -115. So folks are taking the cheese on Memphis. Like you had mentioned, they've been fine without Morant. They're deep at that position. And even with Brogdon playing and Durante, and I think there was someone else who is playing, correct? There's someone else in that.
Lance Stevenson, who Lance Stevenson's not like compared to, he's playing and he was on the injury report, but he makes the team worse probably. He's very exciting to watch, but
yes.
Yeah. Just to call this out. So
game time decision.
I'm 98% sure that Morant is not playing tonight, but there is, just based on what Taylor Jenkins just said, Morant's going through warmups, and Taylor Jenkins said he doesn't see this as anything that's going to linger for multiple games. That does not sound like someone who's playing, but it also is not a player who's been ruled out yet. So like for all sorts of considerations, just keep an eye on this one. Like the unders on every single Grizzlies player are extremely enticing if Morant winds up playing. Like Dylan Brooks is a points prop at 19. He should not be anywhere near that if Morant's out there. And same is true for Desmond Bane, and for if Tyus Jones and D'Anthony Melton have props. Sorry, Shrug, but like Melton's not scoring 10 points if Morant plays. I know that's not part of what you were saying with him, but I still think it's like 98% that he doesn't play. It's just he didn't get ruled out. They're gonna have him go through warmups, but I still think, yeah, it's just like maybe a little worried, just a tiny bit worried, but he's probably not playing tonight.
Most of the props are down now. Only ones you can get are the ones that are the specials that are available for this game.
Yeah, I don't think that's because of Morant. I think they just haven't come back up from the Pacers update we got.
Right.
I don't think anyone really thinks Morant's going to play, but I think it's the 1 or 2% chance could be extremely valuable if that does happen.
Yeah.
Shirag, you mentioned Suns Pelicans, and that game has the second highest total on the slate. Grizzlies Pacers at 236.5. Nets Magic just a half point more than Suns Pelicans. Now, do you look at this game as a game to target in daily fantasy, in DFS?
I mean, you have to consider it. You have potentially the best player on the slate that's available. I mean, we could see Kevin Durant potentially sitting against the Magic. That's the only other guy that could really outscore Kevin Durant on an obvious monster tear, but Kyrie is back because the game's in Orlando. So it doesn't maybe there's another option to where Durant doesn't get as much and Devin Booker ends up being the best play. I mean, I don't know why Anthony Davis thinks that the Lakers would have won against the Suns last year, but like, sure, seeing that and watching them get smoked, I was actually laughing. And Devin Booker is that dude. And why can't he drop a 50-piece on the Pelicans tonight?
All right, very good. Just reminders, Kendall Lewis is out. No Chris Paul. He remains out for the Phoenix Suns. That is the 8 o'clock game tonight. That's no late game. No late games tonight in the NBA. Just the 8 o'clock start. Phoenix. I guess that does help from a fantasy standpoint. You don't have to worry about, late swap is beneficial sometimes, but it's also nice to not have to worry about it. All the news will be out in theory, and you can, actually, I say that now. Yeah, maybe it can be complicated, right? Because, sorry, my cat is distracting me. Don't do that. I feel like Emerson. God, I roll my eyes when Emerson does that with his dogs, and I just did what Emerson does with his dogs.
Yeah, it felt like we were with Emerson for 5 seconds.
Jeez. Guys, before we wrap, again, nothing much else going on in the NFL as it pertains to free agency. So we're mostly NBA today. Anything else you guys want to jump on here before we jump off?
I think calling out a little bit for future betting is worth going into. There's one particular bet that I think just isn't appropriately adjusted yet over in Defensive Player of the Year.
I think I saw some of this on there was some Twitter discussion about this today. Sorry, I'm drawing a blank.
Need the awards tab first. Yeah, There we go. Yeah, I think Bam Adebayo is probably
Look
more
at that
likely.
jump, huh? Wow.
It jumped a lot, and I actually think he should be the favorite now.
Yeah.
I don't think Gobert minus 150 makes any sense. It's just one of the things that's so weird about awards is sometimes voters just all like these people are not operating independently. They're all human beings and they talk to each other. And if there's just a sense amongst them that they don't want to vote for Rudy Gobert again because he always wins and also he's missed games this year. And even though Utah's defense has been good, it hasn't been nearly as good as it's been in the past. So Gobert has been the best defensive player in the NBA this year, but he hasn't been as good as he usually is. And the Heat are going to be the number 1 seed in the East. They have a great defense. I still think Robert Williams has a shot. So what I would do here is bet both of those guys. I think Bam at plus 225 is really good value. And I also think Time Lord at 10-1 is really good value. I don't think Gobert has nearly the chance that's being priced in. And I don't think anyone else really has much of a chance. Like Draymond's missed too much time. Jaren Jackson has some counting stats, but like he's not a great defender. And I don't think that Giannis wins. Just like there's nothing exceptional about Giannis that's any different from previous years. I think voter fatigue is probably part of this too. And I don't think any long shots really are in the race at this point. So like, I think if we come on next week and look at this market again, Bam's going to be minus odds probably. I think at minimum, he'll be ahead of Gobert unless he gets injured or something. So I think this is worth calling out. Like this line is probably going to move very soon.
The other thing I just thought of, and maybe it's a small thing, but it definitely helps. Like the fact that Miami is nowhere close, and I'm saying this as a compliment, they are the 1 seed, but the fact it's so open, right? If the Heat want to prioritize getting the 1 seed, they're going to have to play the whole stretch out, right? They're not going to, you're going to manage minutes to some degree. I get that, but guys are going to play if they want to get the number 1 seed and finish that out. They're going to try and finish games strong. They're not in a position where they've got it locked up with a week to go or 2 weeks to go and they can just sit guys. Right.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And also the Heat tend to rest Butler first, Lowry second, and Bam doesn't get a lot of rest games. Like they just don't. I guess he's younger than them. They don't really care about that as much. Maybe he rests a game or two at some point, but it's not, Jimmy Butler could sit 4 or 5 games the rest of the way. Bam is not going to sit that much. Yep. And especially if they feel like they can get him Defensive Player of the Year honors, I think that's more reason for him to be out there. Like we're seeing this with Embiid, who just won't sit out because he's trying to win MVP, it seems. Like the fact that he played against Orlando on the road the night before Jokic was coming to town, I just don't understand. So it does seem to matter to the coaches if the players have something extra motivating them to be out there.
I have a question for you, Matt, on this. Bam also missed a portion of this year.
Yeah.
It's not like he was 100% healthy. So how many, I don't recall off the top of my head how many weeks he did sit out though. And how does that compare into what Gobert has sat out?
I think it's very similar in terms of number of games. I don't have the numbers on hand, but I think it was something like 6 or 7 weeks. So he missed about 15 or 20 games.
Yeah.
And Gobert has missed about that much also. So they're in the same boat in terms of games missed. Draymond's missed way more games than both of them.
Yeah. Well,
so
the thing is also, it's also recency bias a bit because
Right.
Gobert is recently injured or recently out, whereas Bam was previous to the All-Star break, and then they've already had their pieces all come back together. Like they've been playing multiple games with him back in there. He switches, he's able to guard every position. That's like the cool thing that they want to talk about now, I guess. So I think it's an interesting narrative and a really, really good call out by you.
Well, we'll see. Yeah, we'll see next week. We can always check this in real time, right? Like we don't just have to take my word for it that I was right. We can see what the odds are in 7 days when we come back on here.
Yep.
What else on the team futures front? Anything else you'd like to dive
Should
into?
we just check in on the Lakers just to see, just to see how we're doing?
No, nothing to see there. They're not there.
Their line for what seed they finish at is up, and the next one over to the right. If you go to team seeding, we got the Lakers there.
Oof. Over 10.5 plus 160.
Yeah, so plus 160 to miss the play-in. I actually honestly think it's a reasonable bet to lay minus 215 that they'll. I think this could be the most optimistic thing I've said about the Lakers all season. I think they're going to figure out a way to stay number 10 and make the play-in. I have a lot of confidence that LeBron won't. I know there's speculation LeBron's going to just end his season early because of embarrassment or some other reason. I don't think that's likely unless he re-hurts his knee in any serious way. So that would be the reason to be scared of this. I do think the Lakers can hold off the Spurs, who are just not good. And they're enough ahead. They have like a 3.5 game lead over the Spurs.
Yeah.
They have a slightly smaller lead over the Blazers, but the Blazers roster is
literally nobody at this point.
It's on the Blazers.
Wait, you guys don't believe in Chris Dunn, like giving them an extra lift off the bench?
I actually think he's playing 10 minutes a night. Yeah, Josh Hart's by far their best player. It's actually not even close. There's no close second. Anthony Simons isn't even playing. Yeah. Like Portland's as bad as Oklahoma City. It's basically like Josh Hart is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for them.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the roster is guys who would be like the 10th or 11th man on a normal team. So, yeah, like I don't think Portland is something to worry about.
I mean, dang, man. The way that you just laid that out, that's why the odds are that way. And by saying that there's value in minus 215, it's, man, that's crazy. But looking at the numbers, there isn't that many games left in the season.
Yeah, the thing to be cautious about is LeBron's
so the Blazers are 16-1 to finish under 10.5. You're not giving that at all consideration.
I mean, that's a lot of odds, so you could think about it for sure. But like, Portland might win 3 games the rest of the year.
Yeah,
like their roster's really bad. Yusuf Nurkic is not coming back. Damian Lillard's not coming back. They're missing all of their good players, basically.
Yeah,
they'd rather get themselves set up for a higher lottery pick at this point.
Yeah, because even if they did get into the play-in somehow, like what are the odds they're going to win 2 straight games against New Orleans and Minnesota or the club? Like those teams are all so much better than them.
Yep. Well, yeah, but I'm talking about just the seed, not to make the play.
Right. No, I think just from where they're thinking, if they cared about that outcome, I don't know how real Yusuf Nurkic's plantar fasciitis is. Like maybe they would have him out there sooner if they actually cared about being the 10 seed, or maybe they'd be trying to get Damian Lillard back on the court. They're not going to, like, all indications are that they have no interest in doing that. So yes, it's plus 1,600. So you can certainly take a look at it, but I think it's super unlikely they actually get there. Whether it's likely enough to like get that much odds on, maybe it is. Like they're only a couple games out. And let's say LeBron has a knee flare up and has to miss the rest of the year. Then it's actually a really good bet. Like that's the wild card in all of this. If LeBron doesn't remain healthy, and he's on the fringe of remaining healthy right now, like if that goes the wrong way, the Spurs and the Blazers are all of a sudden very much alive. So that's like my point is the Lakers are going to make the play-in if LeBron stays healthy, but I don't know if he's going to stay healthy, and I think no one does.
Healthy,
right? Also, and Jimmy Butler just got ruled in.
Wow, you just gave everyone a heart attack.
And Sherrod wanted to change the subject. Stop talking about the Lakers.
That's a good point too.
Sherrod, be honest? Did you watch any of that game last night? Did you make time to watch that game?
Lakers Raptors.
Yes, I did make time to watch that game because I had Siakam over 22.5. So I was sweating that in the fourth quarter. And then I was like, hold on. Nick Nurse is the coach. Siakam's never coming out. I got this.
And you've got the Raptors' future that you're still monitoring. So you actually had a good reason to watch the game. That's good.
Yes, correct.
Because it was 30-6. And I'm like, wow.
Oh, no. I only turned it on for the fourth quarter. I was watching Minnesota, San Antonio. I was watching a bunch of the other games earlier. And I was watching Denver, Philly. So like there was no point in even going to the Lakers at that point until I was sweating that Siakam player prop.
Good. That's good. That's right. I forgot you actually had not only a bet last night, but you also you are invested in the Raptors long term, that you actually had a good reason to watch that basketball game.
Not really, because I win. It's 30. They already hit 38, so I won the bet. So.
Oh, they already hit. Okay, great. I couldn't remember the number. So good.
Yeah, it was 36 and a half. It was 36
Congratulations.
and a half, and we're good. Thank you.
That's good. All right. That's enough. I got to go feed Desmond over here. He's being a pain. I'm home alone for like a week, so like I'm now cat dad and DraftKings host and a lot of other things this week. So
enjoy.
Gotta pull my weight here. Thanks to Heyman and Tom behind the scenes. For Matt Meiselman, Shirag Hira, Brendan Glasheen. Be sure to check us out every weekday here on the Slate. We start around 5 o'clock and just before 6. Also, the Sweat is every day on the YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter stream starting at 11 a.m. Have fun with your bets tonight in the NBA, your lineups as well over on DraftKings, and enjoy the hoops tonight. We'll see you next time. Thanks.